Hey, Phil from statisticsmentor.com. So, maybe with the help of my video, you spent hours and hours entering data, your survey data, into SPSS, and now you're finally ready to analyze it. Where to begin? Well, what you could begin with is to do plots, i.e. graphs, and also report the descriptive stats. At this stage, many students will think, okay, I need to report just the mean and standard deviation, right? The answer is not quite. So I've got 3 bullet points here that we're going to look at today. Basically, think of them as brother-sister pairs. You've got to report both of them together. You either report for your variable mean and standard deviation, median, interquartile range, mode, and range. What these things are and how you do them SPSS, we're going to look at now in an example. Okay, so here we have 3 variables, vcont, vodd, vnorm. Now, which pair we report in terms of measuring for the central tendency and dispersion depends on our variable type. Okay, so remember that measure of central tendency just kind of measure is a one number that tells you what the typical value is of your variable, and the options we have are mean, median, mode. For dispersion, that gives us an idea of how spread out your data is, and the options we've got here today are going to be standard deviation, interquartile range, and range. I've got 3 variables and 5 observations for each. Okay, first column, vcont for continuous. Continuous variable, what do we report? We report the mean and standard deviation. And there is a remark about what I've just said, which I leave to the end of the video. If you can just hang on to the end of the video, do so. Okay, v-ordinal, v-ord for ordinal. Remember, an ordinal variable is a categorical variable where these numbers here have a ranking. In other words, well, ranking is what you'd imagine, right? So 2 is lower than 1 is lower than 2, for example. Okay, for ordinal categorical variables, we report the median and alongside with the interquartile range. And again, there is a remark here that I'm going to leave to the end of the video. Finally, we have the nominal one. This is perhaps the easiest one because there's no remark for this. Nominal categorical variables, that is one where the numbers here, they're just labels. It doesn't mean to say that 1 is lower than 2. The 1 is lower than 2. That is not a consequence when we're dealing with nominal variables because these are just labels. I call this left and right. Okay. With nominal variables, we report for the mode, for the central tendency, and the range for dispersion. There's many ways now on how to get these measures. I'm going to just show you. I'll show you pretty much many of them. Okay, I'll start off with the most often used method first. So continuous, we want the mean and standard deviation. Basically, everything we want is under Analyze button. So Analyze, Descriptive Stats, Frequencies. Okay, there shouldn't be anything in here, but if there is, press Reset. We take the continuous variable over into the variables box, and then we click on Statistics. Notice here we've got some options. We've got 4 tables: central tendency, percentiles, values, dispersion, distribution. We want first from the central tendency. You can see under there it's got mean, median, mode, and sum, because they're the options we have for measure of the typical value. We want mean. Dispersion, we've already said that the standard deviation goes with the mean, so let's click that, and then OK. And then uncheck display frequency tables, just because it'll dump out. If you don't do that, it'll dump out another table, which is not very useful. And then press OK. And so we see here that we've got a mean of 343.6 and a standard deviation of 160.1696. Those numbers will, if the variable has units, for example, if we're measuring these things as say kilograms, these, don't forget to report the units kilograms beside both of these guys. Good. Next, ordinal. We want the median and the interquartile range, even though we might not know what interquartile range means. So analyze descriptive stats, frequencies. Okay, there's something there, so reset it. And then we'll go to ordinal, vord, take it over. Click on statistics. Central tendency, we want the median. Now, the interquartile range is, you don't find it under dispersion. Instead, we go over to the percentile values. And we click on quartiles. And then continue. Before I press OK, let's just kind of get a bit more technical. I don't want to scare you, but it's not that technical. It's probably what you know already. Remember that to find the median of ungrouped data, you first list the numbers in ascending order. So here, for this variable, I've got 5 values. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you see. So sample size is 5. So we'll list them in ascending order, and then we'll pick the middle one of the 5th one, i.e. the 3rd value. So think about it. What value do you think you'd get for the median? Okay, I think hopefully you should get 3 in your head. Why? Range these values in ascending order. Well, 1 is the smallest, second the slowest is 2, so it'll come next. So I'd write down 1, 2, the next one is 3, next one is 4, next one is 5. I want the 3rd value, so it just so happens I've got the values 1 to 5 here. We want the 3rd value out of that list, that's a 3. So 3 should be the median. And if you didn't get that, since this is an implied video, don't worry about it. Okay, uncheck the display frequencies table and press OK. So here you go, median, yes indeed it's 3. Percentile, 5th percentile, otherwise known as 1st percentile, is 1.5. 2nd percentile, the median is 3. 3rd percentile, 75th percentile, is 4.5. Okay. As I said, even though if we don't understand what that means, if we report it, that's going to be fine. Finally, nominal. So we want for this the mode and the range. Now, again, a quick recap. Mode is the most frequently occurring observation. So what are the observations here? I've got 1, 2. 1 appears twice in my list. 2 appears 3 times in my list. So the mode must be, yep, 2. Range. Okay, range isn't the way used in a natural language of being, oh, we would say that the range is between 1 and 2. You know, that's what students often write in their kind of homework or exams. In statistics, range means it's got an equation. Range is equal to the maximum minus the minimum value. So here the maximum is 2 and the minimum is 1. So the range is equal to 1. Okay, so it's actually, the range is a single number. It's not it's not like, you can't say, oh, it's 1 to 2. So let's get that. Analyze descriptive stats, frequencies. I reset, and then I take over my variable, the nominal variable in this case, over to the variables box. Statistics, central tendency, mode, dispersion, range, and we're looking for the answer of 2 for mode, 1 for range. Okay, and check that. Well, let's keep it checked so I can just show you that why we should then that should convince you why you should uncheck it. Alright, so here you go. Mode is 2 and the range is 1. Great. Now the frequency box basically just tells you a list of a number of things that happen, a number of occurrences of things for the values. So here you've got 1 appearing twice, 2 appearing 3 times. Okay, and it gives you the percentages and stuff like that, which is fine. Why I said in general it's best not to do it is that if you've got a big long list of many numbers in the variables, then this table could be long. You don't want to do this. There's a kind of case for doing it when you've got categorical variables, but not when it's continuous. I.e., for the first variable, you wouldn't do it, just because then this table would be probably as long as the number of observations you have. I say probably because if you have, yeah. Okay, good. They're the basic kind of things. So now we know that, at least we know that it's not a case of simply reporting the mean and median when we want to report descriptive stats, because it depends on the type of variable we have. Okay, and the type of variable we have could be different for each column of our data. Right, I did say earlier on, right at the beginning, and I hope you're still with me, that, and if you are, well done, that I had remarks about this continuous and ordinal. Continuous, I said that we use the mean and median. Mean and standard deviation. Generally, that's true, unless you reckon or you think or there is outliers in the data. Because if there are outliers in the data, you'd be better off reporting the median and the interquartile range. Just because the mean wouldn't be a great representation of the typical value if you've got outlier in your data set. Of course, then you could have the option of removing the outlier if you found one or more outliers, and then you could report the mean and median as usual, a mean and standard deviation as usual. Okay, so I've just pointed out something there that where you might see you could report the median as opposed to the mean, even though it's continuous. Next, ordinal. In my previous videos, we've discussed this ordinal variable in more detail. Just to recap, ordinal is a character. It's a bit like Jekyll and Hyde. So sometimes it can be treated as nominal, sometimes it can be treated as continuous, and sometimes it's just ordinal, right? But it's usually, sometimes it can be nominal, sometimes it's continuous. Whether we treat it as continuous depends on the type of analysis you want to do with it. So for example, this ordinal could be a Likert scale from a scale of say 1 to 7, 1 to 5, 1 to 10 even, right? For a certain analysis, you might want to treat that scale, instead of being ordinal, you might want to treat it as continuous. For example, you might want to do a regression and you want it to be treated as a scale, continuous. In that case, you would, since you're going to treat it as continuous, you report the mean along with the standard deviation. Alright? So that's it for those two remarks. Another remark. I said that there's more than one way of getting these numbers out for some of them. Okay, well let's just show you. We'll go analyze descriptive stats. I didn't talk about this descriptives button, but this descriptive and the frequency button, they're kind of similar, but the descriptives is like a subset of the smaller brother of the frequencies because you can get less out of it. So if you press on descriptives, you can see under the options box, if you click on it, that you've got mean and then you've got measures of dispersion. Alright, so you might see in your lectures or you might read in some textbooks they use this for continuous. So this would only be for continuous variable. Next, we might have like, you might have done an experiment and you've got two measures, two scores, right? And you want to calculate the average score that the person scores in the test. So why don't I just do something off the cuff here? Just listen to my music or listen to something while I do this. I'm going to just change this. Okay, forget about these two. I've got, I know this is going to be useful for some of you, especially if you're doing psychology or you've created a questionnaire in social science where you're measuring somebody's kind of attitude on something, different facets of it. So we've got V-score, V-score 2, they're measuring something, right? And I want to take the average of these two. So in this case, I don't want to just take the average of this guy by itself, the standard deviation of this guy by itself. Likewise, not just this guy by itself. So what to do? Well, if I just want the mean, well, it's two ways. Let's just say it's two ways first of all. So let's do them both. Say I want the mean and the standard deviation, because let's just say they're continuous, right? So continuous scores, because we're going to add them together. I can create a new variable first. This is the first way. So we'll go to transform compute variable. I'm going to clear my box. And I'm going to say score, this being the aggregate score, alright? And it's going to be made up of v-score 1 plus v-score 2. And then I go OK. And then what you should see is a new column score. And it just says we've just created it. 2 plus 4 for the first person, 6. 4 plus 2, 6, okay? And now we can go ahead, just like before, it's like a new variable. Forget about these two now. To compute the mean and standard deviation for this score. So analyze descriptive stats. Just to show you I can do it differently, I'm going to do descriptives this time. Score over there. Options. Mean, clicked already. Dispersion, checked already. I just leave everything as it is. OK. So score, I have a mean of 6.8, standard deviation of 3.35, say 2 decimal places. That's method 1. Method 2, I'm going to show you how to use it now using calculator. So compute, again, compute variable. Oops, sorry about that. Okay, I want to do something different. What I've done here is I've computed the aggregate score for each person, and then based on a new score I've calculated the mean of that and the standard deviation of that. But say I wanted to calculate the average score for each person. So this is person 1, this person scored 2 on the first test, 4 on the second test. So the average of that, of the two tests, would be 4 plus 2 divided by 2. So that would be 3. Okay, how would I get the average scores per person? I would do transform compute variable, and let's just go score score mean, let's call it. And then what we do is statistical, then I double click on mean, and then there's a box here that tells you more about how to use this mean function. But over here you can see the question marks, there's 2 question marks. I enter the mean of, I enter the 2 variables of which I want the mean. So I want v score, and in the other question mark I want v score 2, and then I press OK. A new column comes up, score mean, and can you see how it's different? So I've calculated the mean of these two guys. For the first person, score 2 of score 4 is mean of 3. For the final person, it's scored 0 on the first test, 2 on the second test, so that's got to be an average of 1. See? So this is different to doing this. The thing I've just done there, computing the average like this, if you have more than 2 scores, you can definitely, there's nothing stopping you doing comma and then putting in more variables. Score 3, comma, score 4, right? Just because it comes out with 2 question marks doesn't mean that it just works with two variables. Also, we didn't have to, under the function group, we didn't have to click statistical and then look for the mean. You could have typed in by hand here straight away mean, score, and then the variables. And it's not case sensitive, so we didn't have to do it in capitals like they show you. If you want the standard deviation as well for each person's score, you could do that. That would be SD, and then that would be V score and V score 2 I had. And then I want to score SD, let's say. Let's call it that. And here you go. Standard deviation. So here you got pairs of mean and standard deviations for each person's score. Alright. Okay, well, there's a pile of stuff there, and so I hope you just work through it and find something that's useful for you there. For more discussion or anything like that, you can always get hold of me on statisticsmentor.com. Okay, cheers guys.